In the dazzling glow of Manhattan's skyline, Isabella Monroe lived a dream coveted by millions. A millionaire husband, a lavish penthouse, and a love story once hailed as destined by fate. But behind the flashing cameras of the press and the clinking of champagne glasses, a dark secret lurked in the shadows. As Isabella carried her first child, she uncovered sweet messages not meant for her husband's late-night escapades, and another woman creeping into her life. Betrayed, abandoned in a hospital room on the brink of life and death, Isabella faced a scandal that rocked the world. Will she crumble beneath the ashes of her shattered dreams, or will she find the strength to rise? For herself and her precious child. This heart-wrenching, drama-filled, and resilient tale will keep you glued to the screen. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and dive into Isabella's emotional journey in Millionaire stories. Don't miss out. The story starts now. Each morning, Isabella Monroe opens her eyes in a lavish penthouse in the heart of Manhattan, where the early sunlight dances on towering glass skyscrapers, painting the skyline in a breathtaking masterpiece. Silken Egyptian sheets cradle her, but her heart is heavy with a haunting question. How did she, a girl raised in a modest wooden home in the suburbs of Pennsylvania, find herself in this glamorous world? Her husband, Alexander Blake, is an icon of success, a self-made millionaire, a familiar face on the covers of Forbes, and a sought-after speaker at prestigious financial conferences worldwide. His name echoes like a legend, but to Isabella, he was once the man who offered fiery glances and promises of an everlasting future. 6 years ago, at an art fundraiser in an opulent gallery, Isabella's gentle gaze stopped Alexander in his tracks. Amid sparkling chandeliers and clinking champagne glasses, she, a volunteer with a sincere smile, captured the heart of a man accustomed to packed schedules and multi-million-dollar deals. He pursued her with the fervor of a treasure hunter, showering her with bouquets of crimson roses, starlit evenings on his private yacht, and whispered vows of a shared life forever. Just 1 year later, they walked down the aisle in an extravagant ceremony at a historic New York church, where stained glass windows cast radiant light on Isabella's stunning wedding gown. Tabloids couldn't stop raving. The brilliant millionaire and the kind-hearted girl, the destined couple of Manhattan. But that dazzling glow was only skin deep. Beneath the perfect facade, silent cracks began to form, like fractures in a priceless oil painting. Isabella, who once poured her heart into volunteer work, organizing charity events with a radiant smile, slowly lost herself. She gave up her afternoons at non-profit organizations, her hours teaching children to paint, to become Alexander's shadow. She believed it was what a wife should do, support her powerful husband, the man building a billion-dollar investment empire. But that sacrifice came at a steep cost. The penthouse dinners now belonged to Isabella alone. The ebony dining table was set with elegance, but only one plate, one wine glass, and the echoing sound of loneliness filled the space. Alexander left before dawn, muttering about international calls with partners in London or Tokyo. He returned when the clock struck midnight, offering curt explanations. "Urgent meeting, darling. I couldn't get away." Isabella tried to convince herself he was under immense pressure. After all, he was the man steering a financial empire fraught with risks, where a single decision could erase millions. But her self-assurances couldn't dispel the growing emptiness gnawing at her heart. The penthouse, with its gleaming glass walls and luxurious furnishings, once symbolized the American dream Isabella never dared to imagine. Now, it felt like a gilded cage, trapping her in glittering solitude. On weekend evenings, as Manhattan's lights twinkled outside, Isabella sat alone, staring at the empty chair across from her, wondering what had changed. Alexander still flashed his charming smile for the cameras, still held her hand at the rare events they attended together, but his gaze no longer lingered on her as it once did. There was a distance, as if he existed in a world she could no longer reach. Isabella found fleeting comfort in phone calls with her mother, Margaret, who still lived in the small Pennsylvania home where Isabella's childhood memories remained vivid. She also confided in Claire, her college friend, who always reminded her she deserved to be cherished. But even those conversations couldn't fill the void. Isabella felt herself drifting, like a boat unmoored in a sea of extravagance. Little did she know that, in the days to come, the perfect world she clung to would shatter into pieces, pulling her into a storm she was utterly unprepared for. In the long, lonely days cloaked in the opulence of her lavish penthouse, Isabella sought solace from the two women closest to her heart. Claire Harper, her steadfast friend from college, was always there through long phone calls, her warm voice like a spring breeze soothing Isabella's aching soul. Her mother, Margaret Ellis, would occasionally drive from her modest home in Pennsylvania, bringing with her enveloping hugs and gentle reminders that Isabella was still the resilient girl who grew up amidst lush green fields. Those fleeting moments, though brief, were the only beams of light piercing the ever-darkening world enveloping Isabella. Then, one day, a spark of hope flared, radiant like sunlight breaking through a tempest. Isabella discovered she was pregnant. Her heart swelled with joy, as if the entire world had burst into bloom. She dreamed of weekend mornings filled with the laughter of a child echoing through the penthouse, of tender family embraces, and, above all, of the Alexander she once knew. The man who gazed at her as though she were his entire universe. She believed this child would be a bridge, rekindling the flame that had grown cold in their marriage. Isabella pictured the moment she'd share the news. Alexander would flash a radiant smile, pull her into his arms, and whisper promises of a joyful future for the three of them. But that dream shattered in an instant. When Isabella, her heart pounding with anticipation, told Alexander she was pregnant, she braced for a magical moment. Instead, she saw only a fleeting frown cross his face, a furrow of irritation, as if this joyful news were an inconvenience. "Wonderful, Isabella," he said, his voice flat, like he was reading a business memo. "We'll adjust the schedule." No warm embrace, no sparkling eyes brimming with happiness, no shared moment she so desperately craved. He merely patted her shoulder, as if she were an employee needing a quick pep talk, then hurriedly left the room, leaving Isabella standing there, her heart splintering like a crystal goblet crashing onto a marble floor. The sting of Alexander's cold response planted seeds of doubt in Isabella's heart, small but sharp. She tried to convince herself he was merely stressed, that the pressures of his financial empire made him distant. But deep down, she sensed something was terribly wrong, like a chilling draft slipping through a cracked door. That doubt ignited into a blaze one afternoon when Isabella entered Alexander's home office, searching for a notebook. On the polished ebony desk, an unfamiliar phone vibrated, casting a faint glow in the dimly lit room. Isabella had never seen this phone. It wasn't the silver iPhone Alexander always carried. With trembling hands, she picked it up. The screen lit up, and a message sliced through her like a dagger. "Call me when you're free. I miss you," followed by a crimson heart emoji. The sender was Vanessa, a name foreign to Isabella, unconnected to any part of her life. Her stomach churned, as if she'd been struck. Who was Vanessa? A colleague from Alexander's investment firm? A key client in his multi-million-dollar deals? Or a friend he'd never mentioned? Isabella fought to quell the rising panic, telling herself it might be a misunderstanding, that there could be an innocent explanation. But deep within, she knew the truth was far from simple. She set the phone down, her heart pounding as if it might burst from her chest. The seeds of doubt had been sown, and they took root swiftly, spreading like a poisonous vine through the garden of her soul. Isabella felt herself teetering on the edge of a dark secret, a storm brewing, threatening to tear apart the perfect world she had struggled to build. She had no idea that in the days to come, that phone and the name Vanessa would unlock a cruel truth, thrusting her into a journey of anguish but also of profound strength. The name Vanessa became a haunting specter in Isabella's mind, like a mournful melody echoing relentlessly in her restless dreams. Each time she tried to push aside her doubts, they returned, sharper, like needles piercing her heart. Alexander, with the caution of a man concealing a forbidden truth, kept the secret phone beyond her reach. By day, he tucked it into the lining of his expensive blazer, guarding it like a closely held confidence. By night, it was locked securely in his desk drawer, as if the phone itself were a gateway to a world Isabella was forbidden to enter. But her curiosity, like a smoldering ember, grew into a blazing fire, urging her to uncover the truth, no matter how devastating it might be. One late night, as faint moonlight slipped through the penthouse curtains, Isabella lay in bed, listening to the steady hum of water from the bathroom where Alexander was showering. The stillness was shattered by a small but piercing sound, the buzz of the secret phone, forgotten on the nightstand. Its screen cast a dim glow, sending shadows dancing across the walls, as if whispering of buried secrets. Isabella's heart pounded, threatening to break free from her chest. She knew this was her chance, perhaps her only one, to confront the truth. With trembling hands, she lifted the phone, the cold metal searing her fingertips like a burning truth. The screen flared to life, and a message sliced through her like a blade. "I've booked the penthouse suite for us next week. Don't forget your promise." The sender was Vanessa, marked with a crimson heart emoji, like a drop of blood staining Isabella's trust. Her fingers shook as she scrolled upward, and what she saw made the world around her spin. Long threads of messages, dripping with intimacy, wove a story she never wanted to be part of. Secret candlelit dinners at upscale restaurants, weekend getaways to hidden beaches, and whispered dreams of a shared future, a future without Isabella. Alexander, the husband she once trusted, was betraying her. But the truth cut even deeper. She opened the photo gallery, and each image was a fresh wound to her heart. Alexander and Vanessa, hand in hand on a luxurious yacht, their smiles framed by a glowing sunset. Another showed them locked in an embrace at a chic restaurant, Alexander's gaze on Vanessa mirroring the way he once looked at Isabella in their early days of love. Then she saw it, a diamond bracelet glittering on Vanessa's wrist, the very piece Alexander had dismissed as an investment when Isabella questioned a credit card receipt. The truth crashed over her like a tidal wave, drowning every shred of hope she clung to. Their money, their life, had been used to nurture this betrayal. Isabella felt the floor beneath her crumble. She wanted to scream, to shatter everything around her, but the pain paralyzed her, as if her body had turned to stone. The sound of the shower stopped, snapping her back to reality. With shaking hands, she hurriedly placed the phone back exactly as she found it. She climbed into bed, closed her eyes, and feigned sleep. But in the darkness, her mind was besieged by indelible images. Vanessa's smile, Alexander's gaze, the diamond bracelet sparkling like a cruel taunt. The sting of betrayal wrapped around her, like a rope tightening around her chest, stealing her breath. When Alexander emerged from the bathroom, his hair still damp, a towel draped around his waist, he was oblivious to the fact that Isabella's world had just collapsed. He leaned over the nightstand, picked up the phone, and slipped quietly into the dressing room. In that moment, Isabella realized she had not only lost faith in the husband she loved, but also the dream of a happy family she had held so dear. The secret had burst open, and the storm on the horizon would spare no one. The agony of Alexander's betrayal cut through Isabella like a razor-sharp blade, twisting deep into her heart, making every breath a heavy burden. Unable to keep the secret buried any longer, she turned to Claire Harper, her steadfast friend from college, to pour out her anguish. In a quaint cafe tucked near Central Park, where golden leaves drifted silently along the pathways, Isabella sat across from Claire. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she recounted everything. The hidden phone, Vanessa's intimate messages, the photos that slashed her heart like cruel daggers, Her words trembled, each sentence a jagged fragment of her shattered dreams. Claire listened, her eyes blazing with a mix of resolve and heartache. "You have to confront him, Isabella," she declared, her voice firm as a solemn vow. "You can't let Alexander treat you like this, especially while you're pregnant. You deserve to be cherished." Isabella nodded, but within her, fear loomed like an invisible wall, blocking her path forward. She had no income of her own, no independent bank account. Everything in her lavish life, from the opulent penthouse to the designer dresses, bore Alexander's imprint. She felt like a bird trapped in a gilded cage, her wings bound by dependency. The thought of facing him, demanding the truth, sent shivers through her. What if he denied it? What if he abandoned her, leaving her and their unborn child with nowhere to turn? She felt ensnared, not just in her marriage but in her very existence, like an actor lost in a play she hadn't scripted. Yet, a faint flicker of hope still glowed in Isabella's heart. She told herself that perhaps, with one sincere moment, she could draw Alexander back to the man who once saw her as the sole light in his world. She resolved to salvage their marriage with a romantic gesture, a final attempt to rekindle the flame that had died. Isabella spent the day in the penthouse's sleek kitchen, meticulously preparing a perfect dinner. Herb-crusted roast beef wafting with the scent of fresh rosemary, velvety mashed potatoes, and a decadent chocolate mousse cake, Alexander's once favorite dessert. She lit candles, their golden glow dancing across the dining table, beckoning a return to happier days. She slipped into the emerald silk dress he'd once praised, standing before the mirror with a fragile hope that tonight he would look at her as he used to. But hours passed, and Alexander didn't appear. Midnight came, and the candles melted into pools of white wax, their feeble light fading, just like Isabella's hope. The food on the table grew cold, mirroring her heart. She sat alone in the silent room, the twinkling lights of Manhattan outside the window seeming to mock her naivety. Finally, as the clock chimed the first hours of dawn, the sound of a key in the lock broke the stillness. Alexander stepped inside, his coat slung carelessly over his shoulder, his eyes weary but devoid of remorse. A foreign scent clung to him, a sharp, expensive perfume, unmistakably not hers. Isabella knew instantly it was Vanessa's trace, the woman who was no longer just a name on a screen, but a brutal reality invading her life. Isabella's heart shattered, like glass hurled against a cliff. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the pain was too immense, choking her voice. She sat in silence, watching the man who had vowed to love and protect her walk through the room without a word of explanation. In that moment, Isabella realized Vanessa was not merely a secret. She was living proof that Isabella's dream of a marriage had twisted into a nightmare. Loneliness, once a faint shadow, now enveloped her, cold and unrelenting, like a warning that the darkest days were still to come. Just 2 days after that shattering night, when the cloying scent of Vanessa's perfume lingered on Alexander's coat, betraying his infidelity, Isabella was jolted awake by a searing pain that tore through her abdomen. It felt like an invisible blade, twisting deep within her body, relentless and cruel. At 5 months pregnant, she knew her body well enough to recognize that any unusual symptom was a warning, a potential threat to the fragile life growing inside her. Her heart pounded, fear slithering into her chest like a cold, biting wind. She tried to dismiss it, whispering to herself that it was merely the exhaustion of sleepless weeks, of nights spent wrestling with the agony of Alexander's betrayal. But as the first faint rays of dawn slipped through the heavy curtains of the penthouse, the pain refused to relent. Instead, it intensified, each wave sharper and more ferocious, as if her body were being torn apart from within. Isabella clutched her belly with trembling hands, her breath shallow and uneven, her mind racing with dread. She knew she could no longer wait. With a resolve born of necessity, Isabella drove herself to Prestige Medical Center, where Dr. Olivia Bennett, her obstetrician, had been her steadfast guide since the earliest days of her pregnancy. The sterile examination room, bathed in harsh white light, felt like a cold, unyielding cage. Dr. Bennett moved with practiced precision, her hands steady as she conducted the checkup, but her face soon darkened with concern. Her brows knitted tightly, her eyes narrowing as she studied the monitors. "There are signs of abnormal uterine contractions, Isabella," she said, her voice low, weighted with gravity. "You need absolute bed rest and must avoid all stress. Your health and the baby's are hanging by a thread." The words landed like a blow, each syllable a reminder of the delicate balance Isabella was forced to maintain. She nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line, but Dr. Bennett's advice felt like an impossible puzzle. How could she possibly avoid stress when her marriage, once a sanctuary of love, was crumbling beneath the weight of Alexander's infidelity? How could she find peace when the man she had adored, the man who had promised her forever, had become a stranger lost in the arms of another woman? The physical pain intertwined with her emotional torment, brewing a storm that raged within her soul, threatening to consume her. Back at the penthouse, Isabella's hands shook as she typed a message to Alexander, her fingers fumbling over the phone's screen. "I just saw the doctor. It's serious. Call me." She stared at the glowing screen, her heart clinging to a fragile hope that he would respond, that some remnant of the man she loved would compel him to reach out. But the hours dragged on, each minute stretching into an eternity of silence. No call came, no text, only a cold, impersonal message from Emily Carter, Alexander's assistant. "Mr. Blake is tied up in meetings and will reach out later." The words were curt, devoid of warmth, and they struck Isabella like a fresh wound, slicing through the last threads of her hope. She sank onto the plush sofa, her body heavy with exhaustion, willing herself to breathe deeply, to calm the pain that surged anew. But each contraction was a stark, unyielding reminder that she was fighting this battle alone, not just for her own survival, but for the life of the unborn child she carried. The pain soon escalated, transforming into a raging inferno that consumed her body, each wave more unbearable than the last. Unable to endure it any longer, Isabella called Claire, her voice trembling over the phone, barely able to form words through the haze of agony. Within 30 minutes, Claire was at her side, her face pale with worry as she found Isabella doubled over, her breaths ragged and uneven. Without a word, Claire supported her friend, guiding her into the car and speeding toward Prestige Medical Center. In the emergency room, the glaring white lights cast stark shadows on Isabella's ashen face, amplifying her vulnerability. Dr. Bennett, summoned immediately, ordered an urgent ultrasound. The screen flickered to life, revealing the baby's heartbeat, faint but persistent, like a candle flickering in a storm. Yet Dr. Bennett's expression grew graver, her eyes betraying a depth of concern that chilled Isabella to her core. "There's a complication with the placenta," she said, her voice steady but resolute, cutting through the sterile air. "We need to admit you for close monitoring. If things worsen, you may require immediate surgery." A wave of terror crashed over Isabella, pulling her under like a riptide into a bottomless ocean. She gripped Claire's hand, her nails digging into her friend's palm as if it were the only thing tethering her to reality. But the deepest agony wasn't the physical pain or the looming threat of surgery. It was the crushing absence of Alexander. The man who had once held her hand beneath a starlit sky, who had sworn to protect her through every storm, was nowhere to be found when she needed him most. Her mind flashed to Vanessa's messages, to the nights Alexander had vanished without explanation, and her heart clenched with a pain sharper than any contraction. In the frigid hospital room, surrounded by the hum of machines and the sterile scent of antiseptic, Isabella realized she was fighting not only for her child's life, but for her own dignity. Loneliness enveloped her like a suffocating shroud, but deep within her, a spark of determination flickered to life. She would do whatever it took to protect her baby, even if it meant facing this storm alone, with nothing but her own resilience to carry her through. In the sterile, whitewashed confines of the hospital room, Isabella lay motionless on the narrow bed, her body racked by relentless waves of physical pain, each one a cruel echo of the deeper, more jagged wounds tearing at her soul. The room was cold, its walls unyielding, and the air carried the faint antiseptic scent of a place where life and death danced in delicate balance. Above her, the monitor's rhythmic beeping punctuated the silence, each pulse a testament to the tiny heart beating within her, her unborn child, a fragile life that anchored her to the world. Every flicker on the screen, every steady thump, was a clarion call to her battered spirit. She had to be strong, no despite the pain, but because of it. Yet the crushing weight of Alexander's absence, the man who had once knelt before her, his eyes alight with promises of forever, made each breath feel like a labor, as though her lungs were lined with lead. His absence was not just a void, it was a betrayal that gnawed at her, a shadow that darkened every corner of her heart. Claire Harper, her unwavering friend, was a constant presence, refusing to leave her side even as the hours blurred into days. Her mother, Margaret Ellis, with her quiet strength and fierce love, took turns with Claire, their vigil a silent vow to shield Isabella from the storm raging within and without. Their embraces were warm, their words soft and encouraging, like whispers of hope in a world that felt increasingly hostile. Claire's gentle hand would brush Isabella's hair back, her eyes brimming with unspoken empathy, while Margaret's steady gaze offered a lifeline of maternal resolve. Yet, no matter how tightly they held her, no matter how fervently they whispered words of courage, the chasm left by Alexander's betrayal yawned wider, a bottomless abyss that threatened to swallow every flicker of hope that still lingered in Isabella's fragile heart. Their love was a balm, but it could not fill the void he had carved out with his absence. One gray morning, as a weak, watery sunlight struggled to pierce the hospital's heavy curtains, Claire entered the room, her face etched with a somberness that sent a chill through Isabella's already fragile resolve. Her friend's eyes, usually so bright with determination, were clouded with worry, and her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a tabloid newspaper. The cover was a garish assault, its colors screaming for attention, its image a blade poised to strike. There, in stark clarity, was Alexander, impeccable in a tailored suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, stepping out of a gleaming limousine. His hand was entwined with Vanessa's, a woman whose radiant smile and confident, piercing eyes seemed to mock Isabella's pain from the page. The headline, in bold, merciless letters, blared, "Millionaire's affair. Pregnant wife abandoned?" The words hit Isabella like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. Her heart, already battered, seemed to falter, as though it might stop altogether. With trembling hands, she reached for the paper, her fingers brushing against the glossy surface, as if touching it might somehow make the nightmare less real. She flipped inside, and the images that greeted her were a gallery of torment, each one a vivid living nightmare. There was Alexander, his face alight with a joy she hadn't seen in months, kissing Vanessa by the shimmering pool of a luxurious hotel, their intimacy a forbidden dance under the sun. Another photo captured them laughing on a beach, the waves behind them sparkling like diamonds under a golden sunset, their happiness a cruel contrast to the sterile prison of her hospital bed. Each image was a dagger, plunged deeper into the raw, bleeding wound of her heart. She could almost hear their laughter, feel the warmth of the sun on their skin, while she lay here, cold and alone, tethered to machines that monitored her child's fragile existence. The photos weren't just evidence of betrayal. They were a public crucifixion, laying bare her pain for the world to see. The tabloids, once eager to crown Alexander as the golden boy of success, had now cast him as the villain in a tragic drama, their pages dripping with salacious glee. Isabella stared at the photos, her vision blurring as tears carved hot trails down her cheeks. The pain was not just from his betrayal, but from the searing humiliation of it all. She, the pregnant wife, was now a spectacle, a victim paraded before millions, her vulnerability exposed under the harsh glare of public scrutiny. She felt stripped naked, her dignity torn away, replaced by the pitying stares of strangers. Margaret, standing sentinel by her bedside, pulled her into a fierce embrace, her own hands trembling with a mother's righteous fury. "He's not worthy of you, Isabella," she said, her voice thick with emotion but sharp with conviction. "He doesn't deserve a single tear from you." But the tears came anyway, an unstoppable flood like a dam bursting under the weight of too much pain, washing away the last remnants of the marriage she had once held so dear. Dr. Olivia Bennett, Isabella's obstetrician, entered the room, her presence a quiet anchor in the storm of grief. Seeing Isabella's red-rimmed eyes and the uneven rise and fall of her chest, she crossed the room and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Isabella, you need to stay calm," she said, her voice low and steady, but threaded with urgent concern. "Stress could harm the baby. We're doing everything we can to keep you both safe." Her words were a lifeline, but also a cruel reminder of the stakes. How could Isabella find calm when her world had shattered under the relentless flash of paparazzi cameras? When the man she had loved, the man she had built her dreams around, was now the centerpiece of a scandal, while she lay here, alone, fighting for the life of their unborn child. The doctor's warning was a stark truth. She could not afford to break, no matter how much her heart ached. Margaret, her eyes blazing with a love that was both tender and unyielding, took Isabella's hand in hers. "You don't need to stay here anymore," she said, her voice steady as a sacred vow. "After you're discharged, come to Pennsylvania with me. That penthouse is nothing but a tomb of painful memories. You deserve a fresh start, a place where you can heal." Isabella met her mother's gaze, feeling the strength of her love like a beacon in the darkness. Amid the tempest of emotions, pain, humiliation, fear, a faint spark of determination flickered to life within her. She nodded, her eyes clouded with tears, but deep within her, a resolve took root. She knew she had to fight, not just for herself but for the child who depended on her. The scandal might have exposed her pain to the world, stripping her bare, but it had also kindled a fierce resilience within her, a fire that burned brighter with each passing moment, ready to face whatever lay ahead. 1 week after Alexander's scandalous affair exploded across the tabloids, Isabella's condition turned critical. In the cold, sterile hospital room, she lay beneath harsh white lights, her frail breaths mingling with the steady beeping of the monitor. An urgent ultrasound delivered devastating news. Her placenta had partially detached, a complication threatening both her life and that of her unborn child. Dr. Olivia Bennett, her eyes grave with concern, declared that emergency surgery was the only option. Isabella felt her heart constrict, fear surging like a tidal wave. Clutching her phone, her trembling fingers typed a desperate message to Alexander. "I'm going into surgery. Please come." Her voice, left on a quivering voicemail, was a final plea sent into the void. But the phone screen remained dark, with no reply. Claire and Margaret, the two steadfast women by her side, gripped her hands tightly as she was wheeled into the operating room. Under the blinding glare of sterile lights, Isabella closed her eyes, her heart pounding with heavy beats. In that moment, teetering on the edge of life and death, she prayed for the child she had yet to meet, vowing that no matter the cost, she would protect this tiny soul. As the anesthesia spread, the lights faded, but in her mind, the image of a future with her child burned brightly, the only flame keeping her resolute. Meanwhile, far from the hospital, Alexander sat in a luxurious spa, candlelight flickering off his champagne glass. Vanessa, with a confident smile, raised her glass to toast a $1 million deal just sealed. Alexander's phone buzzed, displaying Isabella's voicemail notification, but he glanced at it and dismissed it, telling himself he'd call back later. Vanessa, sensing a flicker of hesitation in his eyes, leaned closer, pouring more champagne, her smile a silent claim that she would soon replace Isabella entirely. Alexander returned her smile, but deep within, a quiet unease stirred, though he quickly buried it beneath the glow of his financial triumph. In the operating room, the medical team worked with the precision of artists painting a canvas of life and death. After tense hours, the surgery succeeded. But the baby, a tiny girl named Lily Grace, born prematurely and fragile, was rushed to an incubator in the intensive care unit. When Isabella awoke, her body ached, her mind foggy from anesthesia. Margaret sat by her bedside, her eyes red but glimmering with hope. "She's fighting, Isabella," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Little Lily Grace is small, but she's strong, just like you." Isabella clung to her mother, tears streaming down as she learned her daughter was battling for life. Each faint heartbeat of Lily's was a reason for her to keep going. But that fragile joy was soon shattered by a harsh truth. Alexander was nowhere to be found. The man who had once promised to stand by her through every storm was absent. No call, no message. His absence was a final, merciless blade, slicing through the last remnants of her illusions about their love. Lying in the cold hospital room, Isabella realized she was not only fighting for Lily, but for herself. She had placed her trust in someone unworthy, and now she had to find the strength to rise from the ashes. In that moment, amidst physical and emotional pain, a quiet awakening took hold. Isabella looked into her mother's loving eyes, felt Claire's unwavering presence, and knew she was not alone. She vowed to herself to protect Lily Grace, no matter the challenges ahead. Alexander's betrayal, though agonizing, had ignited a fierce resilience within her, a flame that would guide her through the darkness, toward a future she and her daughter could claim as their own. 2 months after the storm of pain and betrayal, Isabella and her tiny daughter, Lily Grace, left behind the glittering lights of Manhattan to find solace in Margaret's humble home in Pennsylvania. The rolling green hills stretched endlessly, the air alive with the scent of freshly cut grass, and the cheerful chirping of birds sang a melody of healing. After those dark days in the penthouse, haunted by painful memories, this place was a sanctuary, a haven where Isabella could breathe without her chest feeling crushed. Lily, though born prematurely and delicate as a baby bird, grew stronger each day, her bright, clear eyes a guiding light for Isabella through the darkness. Every smile from Lily was a reminder that she had triumphed, not just for herself, but for her daughter. Isabella rose from the ashes of her broken marriage with steely resolve. She hired a sharp lawyer to handle the divorce, demanding that Alexander provide financial support for Lily, but firmly refusing any claim to the lavish penthouse. A place once a symbol of dreams, now merely a prison of painful memories. She wanted nothing tied to Alexander, except what was necessary to secure her daughter's future. With each step on this new path, Isabella felt an inner strength, a fierce resilience she hadn't known she possessed until she was pushed to the brink. One afternoon, as golden sunlight streamed through the trees, a sleek black car pulled up in front of Margaret's house. Alexander stepped out, no longer the polished millionaire gracing Forbes covers, but a man with weary eyes, carrying something akin to regret. He asked to see Lily. Isabella stood at the threshold, her heart racing, memories of betrayal crashing over her like a wave. But she looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully in Margaret's arms, and decided she would not let the past rob her daughter of a future. She allowed Alexander to hold Lily, watching his every move. As he leaned down, gently kissing the baby's forehead, Isabella caught a fleeting glimpse of remorse in his eyes, a faint spark of the man she once loved. But she was no longer the Isabella who trembled at his indifference. With a steady voice, she looked him in the eye. "If you want to be her father, prove it with actions, Alexander." He nodded, but her gaze was icy, as if to say she no longer waited for his promises. Amid Pennsylvania's lush green hills, Isabella discovered a new strength, like a sapling rising from parched earth. The scars of Alexander's betrayal lingered, hidden beneath the surface. But the joy of Lily's tiny hand grasping hers and Margaret's unconditional love mended her heart. She started anew, not with Manhattan's opulence, but with simple, honest things. Her daughter's laughter, cozy dinners with her mother, and peaceful mornings where she could be herself. Isabella's story spread through articles, conversations, and social media posts. From a betrayed wife in the glare of high society, she became a symbol of resilience and maternal love, inspiring millions worldwide. From the ashes of a shattered dream, Isabella built a new life, not founded on wealth or fame, but on love, self-respect, and faith in herself. She stood there, in the green field, cradling Lily in her arms, knowing the road ahead belonged to them, and no one could steal the light they had found. Thank you for joining this deeply emotional journey. If Isabella's story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to explore more dramatic millionaire tales. Your support helps spread the message of courage and hope to everyone.